găsit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii Ziua se apropie. Africa de Sud aduce Israelul la Curtea Internațională de Justiție de la Haga. Acuzația lor: Israelul comite genocid în Gaza. Audierile publice au loc la Palatul Păcii din Haga, Olanda. Auzim adesea această acuzație de genocid în mass media și în timpul demonstrațiilor anti-Israel. Ce se întâmplă și de ce este acest proces atât de important? Andrew Tucker, avocat specializat în Israel și drept internațional, explică această situație. Să-l urmărim.
We have been hearing it for months in media and on the streets. Israel is committing genocide in Gaza on a large scale. South Africa recently took Israel to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The accusation? Genocide. The public hearings are taking place this week. What is going on and why is this lawsuit so important? Today in our studio, Andrew Tucker, a lawyer specialized in Israel and international law. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks, Sharon.
Israel is being accused of committing genocide. What is the importance of this court ruling that is going to take place?
It's very important, Sarah. A lot of people have been talking ever since the 7th of October, claiming that Israel is committing genocide. Even from the very beginning, before there was much evidence of civilians being killed in the Gaza Strip. And this claim is now being brought to the highest court that exists in the international legal order. So whatever the court decides is going to be seen to be extremely important, extremely authoritative, and people will take it as being the truth. Because everybody's
it's an important case.
It's extremely important.
Yeah. And it's talking about genocide. What is genocide in legal terms?
So the genocide comes under the Genocide Convention, which was created after the Second World War, after the Holocaust, the Shoah. And it created a new crime that never existed before. And it's the crime of genocide, which technically is about destroying a particular people.
Right.
So there's several aspects of the definition of genocide. There has to be the destruction, and we're talking about the physical destruction of a people, or acts to destroy a people in whole or in part.
Right.
And there has to be an intention to destroy those people.
Yeah, we're going to talk also about that later. But the court case is about the fact that Israel is being accused of intentionally trying to destroy the Palestinian people, right?
That's it. They're framing this conflict as Israel going into the Gaza Strip, and not only in this case, but the whole 75 years is all intended by Israel to destroy the Palestinians. That's kind of the case that's being put.
Now, the interesting thing is that South Africa is starting this court case. Why South Africa?
Look, South Africa has been traditionally very hostile towards Israel. It's been very closely associated with the Arab world. It was a supporter of Gaddafi in the time who destroyed...
From Libya. Yeah.
From Libya. He was a great opponent of the West. So South Africa has very much an anti-Western, anti-colonialism perspective, and they see Israel as being a colonial enterprise.
Right.
Something that has to be destroyed.
They also have a history of apartheid themselves.
Well, that's the thing. They are proud of their history of getting rid of apartheid. Israel is an apartheid state in their view, so that also has to be dismantled. They kind of regard it as their obligation to the world to make sure that Israel is dismantled.
Yeah, what is South Africa asking the court to do?
So the court is being asked by South Africa to bring provisional measures to stop this conflict.
What does that mean, provisional
measures? That means that
measures?
they want a court to make a ruling that Israel has to stop fighting with Hamas, stop the conflict, there has to be a ceasefire, and there has to be a stop to the killing of people in the Gaza Strip. Now, the court has done this before in relation to other cases of genocide, so there's a history here of the court doing this.
Right. This is talking about the Court of Justice, International Court of Justice. It's not the same as the International Criminal Court, right?
No, there's two main courts in The Hague, the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court. The International Court of Justice decides on disputes between states. The Criminal Court is about prosecuting crimes. So here the Court of Justice is not prosecuting a crime, it's resolving a dispute.
A dispute between two states, but actually it's strange, huh?
It's very strange.
Still coming back to South Africa, because South Africa is not a player.
No.
Israel doesn't have any problems with South Africa as far as I know. So why South Africa then?
Well, South Africa claims that there's a dispute between South Africa and Israel about the convention. So the convention is signed by a number of states. South Africa is one of them. Israel is another. All the signatories to the convention are obliged to comply with the convention. South Africa says, well, Israel thinks it is complying with the convention. We think it's not complying. Therefore, we have a dispute under the convention. And under the convention, disputes can be brought to the court for resolution. I think Israel will say, well, we don't have a dispute with South Africa. We're not in a dispute, so we don't consent to the court making any kind of binding decision on us.
Yeah, right. We talked about the convention. Explain me a bit more about the convention about genocide. It's made in 1948, so right after the Second World War.
Yeah.
What was the origin of it?
So there was a very famous Jewish international lawyer called Raphael Lemkin. And during the Second World War, he went to the United States and he promoted this idea there has to be an international crime of genocide because that's what the Nazis are doing against the Jewish people, is actively seeking to annihilate the Jews as a people.
Yeah.
So he said we need an international crime that deals with this. There was a lot of controversy about that, but it was eventually adopted by the United Nations after the Second World War. So it was very much shaped and formed with the Shoah and the Holocaust in mind, where the Nazis had a policy, and a very deliberate policy, as we all know, of annihilation of the Jewish people.
Right.
And of course, we do see genocide. Genocide is not just particular to the Jewish people. We saw it in Rwanda. We had cases elsewhere in the crisis
world,
in the Balkans and so forth. So there is a need for this kind of thing. But I think it's being used very selectively here.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because why is the court specifically going to investigate Israel for genocide? Because if we look at the war that started on the 7th of October in Israel, it started by Hamas, and the charter of Hamas says that the Jewish people should be annihilated.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the problem is the court doesn't like having a universal remit to investigate whatever it wants. It's just being asked to deal with a certain question. And the question that's being put to it is genocide by Israel, not by Hamas.
So they're not looking at the other side.
They're not being asked to look at the other side, so they won't investigate whether Hamas is committing genocide or not. By the way, the Palestinians are also a signatory to the convention. So you could have a case of saying, well, actually, the state of Palestine, which claims to be a state, is also bound by the convention. Hamas, the Palestinians consider Hamas and Gaza to be part of Palestine. So therefore, Hamas's actions are also in contravention of the convention.
Right, but that's not going to be spoken of
No,
this
it's not
week.
the question that's being put to the court.
What is going to happen? Because the court case is starting on Thursday and Friday there is going to be public hearings. What is going to happen?
So on Thursday, South Africa will put its case. I think there's 2 hours set aside for they've already put their case. It's an 84-page document I have here. They've put their case, the facts, the law, it's all before the court. They will put their case Thursday. Friday, Professor Malcolm Shaw will represent Israel in the court, put Israel's case, and then the court will look at the evidence, look at the facts, look at the legal issues, and probably within 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a little longer, the court will make a decision on...
It seems like a very short period of time, huh?
It's very unusual. It's a new kind of a thing that the court has started to do in the last few years under this convention, which regards it has the power to make provisional or order provisional measures, like ordering a ceasefire, for example.
Right.
And so I think the court will consider that it has that power. The question is going to be whether there's enough evidence here for them to make a decision.
So the court's job is to investigate if there is a genocide taking place from Israel towards the Gazan people.
Yeah.
What are the things they can take into consideration to make a good judgment?
Well, the thing is, the court's basically limited to the information that's put before it. It's not a court that goes out and looks for whatever information is
only what they
relevant.
receive. That's
so
what they
is
weigh.
put before the court is what it will make a decision on. South Africa has put a case which basically argues that for 75 years, Israel has been purposefully trying to destroy the Palestinians. So they frame the Gaza conflict as being an extension
of the 75 years.
Yeah, that goes right back to 1948. They said the Nakba, the destruction of the Palestinian people, was all part of a campaign to destroy the Palestinians and create a Jewish state on the destruction of the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And so they ascribe a kind of intent to the Jewish people over the history, and they say now Israel's just using this conflict against Hamas to further that objective of destroying the Palestinians as a people.
But talking about genocide, you explained that the intent of a country is important.
Yeah.
So Israel is being accused of intentionally wanting to destroy the Palestinian people, but how can you prove intent?
It's a really good question. So there's two things indeed the court has to decide on. Is there actually the destruction of part of the people? So clearly there are a lot of civilian deaths in Gaza. There's a prima facie case that there's been destruction or killing of people. To prove intent is very difficult. The thing, however, here is the court doesn't have to actually prove the intent, or South Africa doesn't have to prove it. It just has to show there's a likelihood of the intent. This is what makes the case. Well, this is what makes it dangerous because the court, it's got limited information. It doesn't have to actually prove there is the intent. It just has to decide whether there's a possibility that Israel actually has that intent. Now, if you look at the information, the arguments that are put before the court, very selective. So they draw out these statements made by Prime Minister Netanyahu or the President Herzog, who Netanyahu said, we're going to destroy them like the Amaleks, right? So this is seen as a statement saying, we, Israel, are going to destroy the Palestinians.
Right.
There's no context. Of course, a lot of things have been said by Israelis over the last months, and some of them are probably not very sensible things to have said. But many of them are also not said by Israeli leaders. They're just said by leaders, perhaps members of the Knesset. There's even statements of people here who don't even exist. So they cherry pick these statements and put them together and say Israel has, as a state, has the intent to destroy the Palestinians.
But you say there are even quotes in this file of people that don't exist.
Yeah. There's one
That's
case
strange.
of a person they say made the statement and he just simply doesn't exist. So, but there's other statements like members of the Knesset, for example. Well, they don't represent the government.
No.
They have no authority to represent Israel. So you can't say this is evidence of Israeli intent. Of course, the Israeli people are angry. There was a lot of anger, and they're frustrated. And they see that a lot of the Palestinians in Gaza are supporting Hamas. So there is a tendency to think, well, the people of Hamas are opposing us. And this is part of the dilemma because Hamas is embedded in the civilian population in Gaza. We don't know exactly who is Hamas and who isn't.
Right. Yeah. So how is Israel going to defend itself? Because it decided to cooperate also in this court case. How are they going to defend themselves?
Well, we don't know because we haven't seen their arguments yet. But there's a number of things they will probably seek to do. One is, as I say, I think they will probably argue there's not even a dispute here that the court can decide on. But I think the main thing will be about arguing that Israel is not destroying the Palestinians, it's destroying Hamas. In order to destroy Hamas, we need to get to Hamas. Whereas Hamas, they're embedded in tunnels, in hospitals, in mosques,
hiding
in other
behind
public
civilians.
places.
Yeah.
So there is no way that we can destroy Hamas, which is a legitimate military objective under international law, of course within the restraints of proportionality and so forth. But there's no way of destroying Hamas without also, unfortunately, the loss of civilian lives in Gaza.
Right.
That is not evidence of intent to destroy the Palestinians. So I think they will say that the Genocide Convention is just not applicable to this conflict. It's the wrong legal framework to be analysing the conflicts.
Yeah, but you could also say there is people accusing Israel. Israel is defending itself. These judges, they are well-educated people, and they are the ones who can put all the information together and make a good ruling.
Yeah, well, they will. I mean, we have to trust that these judges are good jurists, and they will make a balanced and a reasonable. And I trust that Israel will put a very strong case here. Again, as I say, they will say the rules of international humanitarian law are applicable. Israel certainly should be investigated, like any other state, for whether it complies with international law, but not focus on genocide, because that's just one rule amongst many.
If you would be the lawyer in this case, what lawyer for Israel to defend Israel, what would be your most important thing you would say to the judge?
Oh, I would focus very much on this question of intent. Genocide is very much premised on the idea that the whole objective, the sole objective of this campaign is to destroy not Hamas, but the Palestinians as a people. So there is simply not evidence, and South Africa hasn't put the case, hasn't put a binding or a compelling case that Israel as a state has this intention.
Right.
And there's so much evidence that I'm sure that Professor Malcolm Shaw, who's representing Israel, is going to put to the court, that Israel is doing everything it possibly can. Israel goes much further than any other military army in the world to make sure that civilian casualties are kept to a minimum.
Yeah.
But it's operating in a very hostile and complex urban warfare.
Of course, yeah. What do you expect the outcome of this court case will be?
I'm worried because the court has a history of, I think, unbalanced. 20 years ago, the court issued an advisory opinion in relation to the security barrier. It was presented with one-sided information, and it came with a very one-sided opinion.
Right.
In this case, the difference here is Israel is actually putting its case. It didn't in 2004. So I think the court will have more information in front of it. So I'm hopeful it's going to come to a very balanced decision. There is a lot of pressure on the court politically.
From both sides.
From both sides, but certainly on the international community. You know, when you have 20 UN experts saying this is genocide, very hard for a court which is part of the UN system
to rule something else. Yeah.
And this is going to be the dilemma, I think, for the court.
And what is coming out of it? There is going to be a court ruling in favor of Israel or not in favor of Israel, or maybe somewhere in the middle. And what is going to be the implication of such a ruling?
Well, in the first place, it's just a ruling. It's just a decision by this court.
But you say it's the highest court, so it's important.
It is. It's the highest court in the UN system, so it's taken to be extremely authoritative. There will be an argument about whether it's binding or not, and on whom is it binding. But it's a decision about the convention in relation to this particular case.
Right.
If it decides to issue the provisional measures which South Africa is asking for, then it's going to decide that there must be a ceasefire. So it will call upon Israel to stop the fighting. It will call upon Israel to make sure that it's not killing civilians. And then the question will be, well, what will Israel do with that ruling, if it makes that ruling?
Right.
And Israel is not going to comply with that ruling. Why not? Because Israel knows it has to destroy Hamas in order to secure its own people, which is its obligation and right under international law.
Yeah.
To secure the state of Israel. Don't forget, on the 7th of October, 3,000 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad people invaded the state of Israel. They breached the wall, the fence in 90 places.
To attack Israel, yeah.
To attack Israel. So it wasn't just a terrorist attack, it was a terrorist invasion of Israel.
Yeah.
So Israel is fighting also against Hezbollah, it's fighting in Syria, it's fighting against Yemen. This is a multi-front war that Israel is engaged in.
Yeah.
And a ruling by the court on the Genocide Convention is not going to persuade Israel to stop this fighting.
Right. Last question, because I started this interview with saying that on the streets we hear also a lot that Israel is committing genocide. So it's like a broad opinion carried by many, many people. What is the effect of the fact that the label that is put to Israel as being committing genocide? What is the effect?
I think it's highly problematic. The same thing happened 20 years ago with settlements. The court made there was one statement in that ruling, opinion, which said that that the establishment of Israeli settlements is illegal under international law. And that one statement has been taken to be proof, binding proof that all settlements are illegal, which I think is false. Some settlements may or may not be illegal.
So
it's very complex.
Impact.
But it's that one liner which people will use. Israel is committing genocide. Israel is a genocidal. And this is the worst thing that can be said about any state.
Yeah.
That it is intentionally, and I think it undermines so deeply the essence of what the Jewish state is all about, which is all about preserving life.
Yeah.
So I think it's very dangerous, even the fact that the case is taking place. But if the court makes a decision like that, I think it's going to lead to even more in the media, in the public sphere, this idea that Israel is deeply illegitimate.
Yeah, thank you for explaining all this very complicated stuff, and I'm sure you will also continue to follow what the court is going to say.
Very much so.
Thank you for coming in our studio, Andrew Tucker. And thank you for watching. You can stay involved with our work. For more information about Christians for Israel, go to our website c4israel.org. Thank you again for watching, and goodbye.